interviewed Ranil Wickremesinghe today. He's the current president of Sri Lanka, the man who stabilized this island nation after its economic collapse in 2022. Wickremesinghe is running for re-election. The popular perception is that he's falling behind in the race, but with just 2 days to go for the election, he's confident of making a comeback. He also thinks that Sheikh Hasina should remain in India, and he believes that Mohammad Muizzu of the Maldives may be finally warming up to New Delhi. We talked about a whole lot of things. We'll bring you excerpts of the full conversation. In West Asia, meanwhile, the situation is rapidly deteriorating. Lebanon suffered another wave of attacks yesterday. Israel has declared that a new phase of this war is now underway. The US Fed has finally cut interest rates. We'll decode what this means for the US economy and the rest of the world. Canada says that India is meddling in its elections as it continues to provide a free run to Khalistanis on its soil and can overwork, kill you. The story of an Indian chartered accountant is making waves on the internet. We'll talk about it. The headlines first. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi campaigns in Srinagar, promises to restore Jammu and Kashmir's statehood. His rally comes just a day after the first phase of the assembly election there. Prime Minister Modi's party, the BJP, has never won a seat in the valley. The next phase of polling in Jammu and Kashmir is on the 25th of September. India is on track to becoming the third largest economy by 2031. That's according to an S&P Global report, which stressed on continued reforms to maintain momentum. The report also says that equity markets are expected to stay competitive due to strong growth prospects. Currently, India is the world's fifth largest economy. Gabon's former president Ali Bongo says he is renouncing politics for good. He announces his decision to withdraw from political life, asking for clemency for his imprisoned wife and son. Bongo had ruled the oil-rich West African nation for 14 years before being overthrown in a coup last year. Taiwan recognizes same-sex marriage between Chinese and Taiwanese couples. This is for the first time that Taipei is recognizing cross-strait unions. Taiwan has been at the forefront of Asia's LGBTQ rights movement. In 2019, it became the first place in the region to legalize marriage equality. And Nintendo sues the developer of a video game for patent infringement. The video game has been dubbed Pokemon with Guns. It has sold more than 5 million copies in just 3 days. The game features avatars similar to Nintendo's very popular Pokemon franchise. The chaos in Lebanon continues. Anything electronic seems unsafe there at the moment. After the pager bombings on Tuesday, we saw a second round of explosions on Wednesday. More devices blew up. After pagers, Israel detonated walkie-talkies, solar energy equipment, and even fingerprint scanners. These are the devices that exploded in Lebanon. Israel says a new phase of the war is underway.
I believe that we are at the start of a new phase in the war, and we must adapt.
The casualty count is mounting in the meantime. More than 30 people have died in the past 2 days in Lebanon, and over 3,000 have been injured. More importantly, it is not clear if Israel's operation is over. Do they have more traps left? Will there be more explosions in the days ahead? People in Lebanon are living in fear. They do not trust anything with a battery.
I didn't expect what happened today. Things are repeating all over again. We had some devices here that we believed were 100% safe, but out of caution, we removed them from the store because we got worried. Our enemy is a traitor. May God give us peace, that's all we can say.
The enemy they're referring to is Israel, which of course is not taking responsibility for the attacks, but it is obvious now. Israel has infiltrated the Hezbollah setup. Its entire communication network has been compromised. The question is, why did Israel launch this attack now? Why now? Some reports say that the Hezbollah had become suspicious. 2 of their operatives had some issues with their pagers. They weren't exactly sure what it was, but they felt that something was wrong, and Israel got a whiff of this. They had planted the explosives for a surprise attack. They were supposed to be used in case of a full-blown war between Israel and Hezbollah, but in recent days, the Israeli leadership was concerned about their bomb devices being discovered. So they basically had a choice: detonate the bombs now or wait and see if they're exposed. So it was a use it or lose it moment. That is how they described it. Finally, Israel decided to use it. They triggered the bombs, and now they're preparing for Hezbollah to retaliate. The Israeli military is dropping hints. That's the IDF, the Israeli Defence Force. It says that it has more surprises in its arsenal.
We still have many capabilities that we have not yet activated. We saw some of these things here, and it seems to me that the readiness is good, and we are preparing these plans going forward. The rule is that every time we work on a certain stage, the next two stages are already ready to advance. At each stage, the price for Hezbollah must be higher.
All eyes are now on the Hezbollah. They have suffered a big security breach. Many members of their military unit are hurt. At least 13 Hezbollah fighters are dead. These attacks have also embarrassed them and challenged their grip on power. Yesterday, the walkie-talkies exploded during the funerals of the victims from Tuesday's attacks. Hezbollah has issued fresh threats now.
What happened on Tuesday and Wednesday? On Tuesday, I only want to give a summary. As you all know what happened. Thousands of pagers were targeted by the Israeli enemy, and they were all detonated at the same time. The enemy violated, through this attack, all the regulations, laws, and red lines.
So how would they retaliate? What military options do they have? The fact is, their choices and options are limited. They could launch more rockets towards Israel. That's the easy option. Hezbollah has an arsenal of 150,000 rockets. Yesterday, it did launch some of them, targeting Israel's military positions at the northern border. But they couldn't inflict any damage. Israel has bolstered its defenses in the north. It is deploying more soldiers and more military resources. So more rocket attacks may not be as effective as the Hezbollah would like them to be. The next best option would involve roping in Iran. You see, Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy group. It gets funding and military support from Tehran. So the Hezbollah leadership could ask Iran to mobilize other proxy groups in the region to help them. Together, they could launch a wider assault on Israel. And Iran has good reasons to facilitate such an operation. Its envoy to Lebanon was targeted too in the recent attacks. The Iranian envoy to Lebanon was targeted. He was hurt by one of the compromised pagers. Now, Tehran has issued a statement accusing Israel of committing what they call mass murder. Hezbollah has set no deadline for a response, but cross-border tensions remain high. Both Israel and Hezbollah are exchanging fire. We just told you about the rocket attacks from Hezbollah's side. In response, Israel is pounding southern Lebanon with aerial and artillery strikes. So the situation remains quite tense. From the west to regional powers like Jordan and Egypt and even the United Nations, they're all urging restraint. The UN believes that these attacks are a preemptive strike.
This event confirms that there is a serious risk of a dramatic escalation in Lebanon, and everything must be done to avoid that escalation.
These warnings are all falling on deaf ears. As things stand, neither Israel nor Hezbollah appear ready to de-escalate. Now let's look at exactly what happened. How Lebanon's electronic devices were compromised and what this means for the rest of the world. Yesterday we told you about the pagers, about how they were from a Taiwanese company, but they were apparently manufactured by a Hungarian firm called BAC Consulting. This is the registered address of the Hungarian firm, the building you're seeing. A Hungarian MP tried to enter the building yesterday, but to no avail. He has called for an investigation by his country's anti-terror unit. A Hungarian government spokesperson then put out this tweet. He said the BAC was, and I'm quoting, a trading intermediary with no manufacturing site in Hungary, and that the pagers had never been in the country. Basically, Budapest wants to wash its hands clean. And we still don't know for sure where the pagers were manufactured. But the theory is that Israel got involved in some stage of the supply chain. And the same thing seems to have happened yesterday with the exploding walkie-talkies. The devices were originally made by a Japanese company called ICOM. The walkie-talkies were all units of the same model, the ICV-82. Now, ICOM says that this was continued in 2014. All the walkie-talkies were made in Japan at the same factory, but about 160,000 units had been sold overseas. ICOM's director said that the walkie-talkie seems to have been tampered with. Their batteries may have been replaced with those that could explode. Now, the Japanese firm is investigating this incident. We'll get more details in the days to come, but as we wait for those answers, there's a rising tide of fear in Lebanon.
Some rumors have spread claiming that lithium batteries and solar panels are exploding. For example, if I have solar panels or a lithium battery at home, I would definitely disconnect them just because of these rumors. Even though they are probably false, people still feel afraid.
I didn't expect what happened today. Things are repeating all over again. We had some devices here that we believed were 100% safe, but out of caution, we removed them from the store because we got worried. This is something that has never happened before in the world. We didn't expect it, and we don't know of any place that has faced a similar attack.
Lebanese civilians are afraid that their electronic gadgets could suddenly turn into bombs. There's both fear and anger in Lebanon and abroad.
Widespread simultaneous explosions across Lebanon and in Syria are shocking and their impact on civilians unacceptable. The fear and the terror unleashed is profound. Simultaneous targeting of thousands of individuals without knowledge as to who was in possession of the targeted devices, their location and their surroundings at the time of the attack violates international human rights law and, to the extent applicable, international humanitarian law.
Let's step back for a moment and think about the Lebanon attacks objectively, about the implications of exploding electronic gadgets. Almost all of us carry some device or the other at all times. It could be a cell phone, a smartwatch, wireless earphones, anything. Who made that device? And no, not the brand. Who really made it? Where was it manufactured? Where did the battery come from? Who was the last person handling that little lithium-ion thing so close to your vital organs? It's not a comforting thought, is it? The Lebanon attacks show that personal electronics can be weaponized. They are not supposed to be. There's even a law against it, a law against rigging civilian objects. But it's happened anyway. And now the genie is out of the bottle, so expect a new form of terrorism and warfare to emerge, supply chain terror or factory floor warfare. If your country ever gets into a conflict, make sure the enemy is not manufacturing anything that you use, and make sure you aren't importing things from shell companies in Budapest to start with. The last 2 days have exposed a weakness all across the world. How many of our governments are scanning every single import for battery bombs? Well, they should really start now. Or perhaps start manufacturing things at home, because if they don't, any of us could fall victim to a battery blast in our pockets. The pager bombings were deadly. They will have implications far beyond Lebanon and West Asia. And while investigations will go on as to who carried out these attacks, all fingers point to Israel, and particularly to something called Unit 8200. This is Israel's premier cyber warfare and intelligence agency, Unit 8200. Its missions are critical, its methods secretive, and its influence stretching across the globe. Our next report looks at how this unit functions, how they carry out such operations, and how they managed to pull off this particular attack on the Hezbollah.
Israel's intelligence infrastructure was born out of necessity. It started with codebreakers, radio operations, and primitive American military equipment. Soon, it evolved into Unit 8200, Israel's elite cyber warfare unit. It was established in 1952. The initial task was guard the nascent state of Israel. Today, it's a global cyber powerhouse. In Hebrew, it's known as Shmone Matayim, but the world knows it as Unit 8200. It's the largest unit within the IDF, that's the Israeli Defence Forces, often comparable to America's National Security Agency, or even the UK's Government Communications Headquarters. Basically, it's the heart of Israel's intelligence. As technology advanced, so did the capabilities of this unit. From signal interception to the latest cyber strikes, right now the unit is involved in some of the biggest digital operations of the 21st century. The unit is primarily staffed by 18 to 21-year-olds. They're scouted early, often just after high school, through an IDF screening process. They are then trained. The soldiers can't reveal that they're part of the unit. Many of Unit 8200's alumni go on to become pioneers in Israel's booming tech industry. From cybersecurity firms to cutting-edge startups, they drive innovation in Israel's tech sector. In 2010, Iran discovered Stuxnet. It was a malicious software, initially targeted at Iran's nuclear facilities. Soon, Iran learned that its centrifuges were failing. Stuxnet was the world's first digital weapon, and while Israel never acknowledged its involvement, it's believed that Unit 8200 was behind it. Soon, these types of attacks became more and more common, and leading the way was Unit 8200. In 2017, Lebanon's state telecom company, Ogero, experienced a massive cyber attack. Unit 8200 was believed to be behind it. The mission was simple: disrupt Hezbollah's communications. In 2018, ISIS plotted to take down an Australian airliner. The plan was foiled. The credit did not go to Australian law enforcement. Instead, it went to this Israeli unit. They intercepted crucial intelligence and passed it on to Israel's allies. But no intelligence unit is infallible, and Unit 8200 has seen its fair share of failures. The biggest was the October 7th attack. Its inability to foresee and prevent the Hamas attack resulted in a shake-up. The unit's commander resigned. Then there have been other controversies. In 2014, 43 reservists took a bold step to publish an open letter. It condemned what they called unethical surveillance of Palestinians. Which brings us to the latest Hezbollah attack. Unit 8200 is said to be behind it, and it was quite the elaborate plan. Reports suggest that they built shell companies, so they didn't just rig the devices. Israeli intelligence, in fact, manufactured them. It was an intelligence operation like no other. We live in an era where wars are not just fought with weapons, they are fought with algorithms, data, and surveillance. And Unit 8200 stands at the forefront of that. In the world of cyber warfare, one thing is certain: Unit 8200 is a force to be reckoned with.
Now on to Sri Lanka. We are here in Colombo. As you know, the country is heading to polls on the 21st of September. There are 39 candidates on the ballot, but it's largely a three-way contest. And one of the frontrunners is the current president, Ranil Wickremesinghe. Earlier today, we sat down with him to find out why he thinks he's going to win this election. Are the Tamils going to vote for him? What does he think of the other candidates in the fray? What's his advice to Bangladesh, his take on India-Maldives ties and the Chinese spy ships that come in the name of conducting research? We talked about all of this and more. Here's an excerpt from that conversation. President Wickremesinghe, welcome to First Post. How are you?
Keeping fine. Haven't seen you for some time.
Yeah, it's been 1 year, exactly a year back. We were talking in the exact same room, and before that in 2022 we had a conversation when Sri Lanka was on the brink of economic and social collapse, and that was a period of chaos, and that is when you took charge. When you look back, do you think you've been able to accomplish all that you set out to?
Yes. I wanted to have, I was going to establish stability, have a stable Sri Lanka, law and order being maintained, the democratic system to go ahead, and of course to put the economy back on track. I've done that.
The experts who've been following your actions and your policy moves see the changes, that there is social stability and the economy is in much better shape than what it was 2 years ago. But your critics say that you used excess force to dismantle the protest sites, and even in the economic reforms that you brought in, people complain that the taxes are still too high, the VAT rates that were introduced earlier this year are high, electricity bills are going up. Do you think that maybe the bitter pill was too bitter?
I don't think the bitter pill was too bitter. We had to take a pill at some time and someone had to take a decision. No one was willing to take that decision, and I didn't want it to be another Greece. We still have a gap, which I will in 2025 be able to bridge so that people will feel the life is back to normal.
They're going to vote on Saturday. Do you think that they will get the message?
I've given the message, and many of them have got it, that there is a process and we'll finish it in 3 years. They have also got the message that those who are trying to help them were those who are not willing to help them in 2022 and ran away. That is the major issue. Can you trust those who ran away?
Yes, the public memory, they say, is short, and the IMF, we understand, is pushing for more austerity measures, and this has been a trend, you know, in countries like Kenya, where they asked the government to tighten its belt, and that led to protests, and that has been a criticism against the fund. Do you think that they're unfair to borrowers like you?
No, to begin with, they are not asked for any more austerity measures, and
They're not
no one
asking
will
for more rate interest hikes.
No interest rates. Interest hikes will be decided by the market, not by the IMF. They left that to us.
You talked about debt restructuring deals, and it's been a complex conversation for you and negotiations. You signed 2 restructuring deals this year. One was with the OCC, the Official Creditors Committee, of which India is a part. The second was separately with China. And these were very, like I said, complex negotiations. Do you think it would have been easier for Sri Lanka had all the players been part of one framework?
Certainly it will be much easier, but then we are not expecting that to happen.
You did push the Chinese.
We have asked them also if they like to come together, but they said they are negotiate on different basis. So I think this has more to do with the power politics of the IMF and the share that China should get than anything to do with Sri Lanka.
Let's talk about the elections. You've been described as the old guard in this election, and the other 2 contenders are both in their mid-50s. In the last 2 years, as you went about fixing things in Sri Lanka, did at any point you think that you should pass the torch, or have you decided to sort of see the job done before you leave?
I thought both those guys are not energetic enough. And in fact, I
Not energetic enough?
Yeah, I thought I should give them some energy drinks. Even now they are far behind me. I came here, but I want to finish the job.
You took power a couple of years back with support from Rajapaksa's party, SLPP, and the public anger was, and some of it still continues to be directed against them. Do you think that that is going to affect your chances in this election?
I took over the job as Prime Minister because no one else was doing it. Public is not angry with me on that. The SJB said they won't take it. They said publicly. JVP also didn't touch it. And then I became president because no one was wanting to be president either. Though again, no one wanted to touch it. As a result, I took over and I am running the country. Now those who ran away are now trying to find reasons by saying that the Rajapaksas are with me. But Rajapaksas are now contesting on their own. Namal is contesting.
What do you think of his chances?
I am not very positive about his chances, no. In my view, you should have thought twice before contesting.
Sure. We looked at opinion polls in the Sri Lankan media, and they seem to think that NPP leader Anura Dissanayake is the front runner. I'm not going to ask you about the opinion polls, but you spoke about Namal Rajapaksa. What's your impression of Mr. Dissanayake?
Mr. Dissanayake has been in the opposition. He has now become a threat to Mr. Sajith Premadasa. He is not a threat to me.
Okay. If he does by any chance manage to win, we know that his party has an anti-India past. What would it mean for the relationship between New Delhi and Colombo? And I ask this because we've seen things change vis-a-vis the Maldives and more recently with Bangladesh.
But I worried he won't win.
But if he were to, would you worry?
I said he won't win, so why worry about it? I don't worry about things that's not going to happen.
Okay.
It won't snow in Colombo tomorrow, why should I worry about it?
Some hardline Tamil groups have decided to boycott the election. Some others are backing a common Tamil candidate, and yet others are backing Sajith Premadasa. Do you think the Tamil vote is going to be split in this election?
No, it will come to me.
It'll come to you?
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
The politicians are backing different candidates. People are backing me.
Do you have any survey, anything that has given you this?
Look, I've gone there. I know the people. It's going to happen.
That's very interesting. I think that's a headline there. Let's talk about regional politics as well. And we saw what we saw in Bangladesh. Did you see it coming? Did you imagine that this would happen in Dhaka?
I didn't think it would happen so fast. I knew there were problems coming up, and it had to be dealt with, but looks as if the manner in which they handled it was really problematic. This would have happened in Sri Lanka if what the opposition said took place, that is, no one was willing to be president.
Yes, and the person who is in charge right now, his utterances and actions, of course Sheikh Hasina is in India, and that has become a big point of contention, and Bangladesh wants her to be extradited at some point. There is a question of minorities. There is visible tension between Dhaka and New Delhi. What is your advice to both these players?
First is to get stability into Bangladesh, and we are also investors. They have told the people to stay there. First give them confidence, and we should all help Bangladesh to get back on its feet. As far as Sheikh Hasina is concerned, these are what you call political issues, and it has to be decided in such a manner. Many leaders leave their countries, go abroad, and they remain abroad. So that's really a political matter. I think what we have to give priority is to Bangladesh becoming stable. And if Sheikh Hasina is out of the country, let her be out of the country.
Last year when I spoke to you, Mohammad Muizzu had just taken over in the Maldives, and there was this whole anti-India, India out campaign that propelled him to power. And you said in our interview that he should go slow on his approach towards India. Do you think he's heeded your advice?
He's certainly more friendly with India now. He told me afterwards that he had to make some promises in the election. That's what he had to do. But I was there when Prime Minister Modi was sworn in, and I found the chemistry between them have really improved.
Because reality has kicked in, and he realizes that working with India is the way forward.
You should go to Mahalia and ask that question from.
Earlier this year, your government also imposed a moratorium on the Chinese, they call themselves research vessels, and since then none of those vessels has docked in Sri Lanka, but that is going to be lifted in January unless there is a revision in policy from Colombo's side.
There is a report. We stopped everything till the report came in, and also our desire to build up our own capacity on hydrology. I think the report should be available. I haven't looked at it, but we've looked at the practices, and let's see what's in the report.
What kind of pressure is there from Beijing to allow the ships to come?
No, Beijing likes its ships to come, but we explained to them that the report has to come in. And see, we generally allow ships to come in, but Beijing, their warships have come. I think there's a sailing ship also that was coming in. It's only in regard to some of the research, but we're also doing research. So
you believe that research bit? Do you think there's 5 ships?
Ships that have come in are research ships.
But they do other things also?
I don't know. I haven't gone into it. We haven't gone into it.
They're coming to your country?
Yes, so they are coming as a research ship.
But do you share New Delhi's concerns that they may be indulging in spying as well?
We have talked with Delhi to ensure that there are nothing adverse to their security that's taking place. So we looked into those, and Chinese are aware of it. It's not something secret. We've told them also.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and wish you all the very best for the election.
Thank you.
Vantage continues after a short break.
With Pakistan, they want talks with Pakistan. The question is very simple, whether Congress party endorses these views or not. If not, then why they are in Triple Alliance? Number 2, now Pakistan has also endorsed this view. So does that mean that our enemy Pakistan, don't speak in between, I never spoke in between, right? So does that mean that if Pakistan stands, if Pakistan wants return of 370, do you feel that is good for the country? I think it's a big question to a national party. It's not only about Jammu and Kashmir. It's a repercussion, since Congress is the national party, the repercussion is all across the country. You cannot just play around in between. Not here, not there. You should
Nasir
be very
Lone,
clear.
I'd like to bring you in. Okay, let me also bring
in
in the National Conference spokesperson, Nasir Lone. Nasir, I'm sure such a pre-poll alliance wouldn't have happened without support from the Congress party. NC is very clear that there is support coming in. What has given the Pak Defence Minister the kind of confidence to say so, that they are on the same page as Pakistan today if the Congress was not if actively and verbally but silently supporting your manifesto?
My first and foremost, good evening to everyone first of all. My first and foremost question to all of you is what is the problem with Article 370? Article 370 was given by Indian Constitution. It was way within the ambit of the Indian Constitution. It was the link that, joined the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir with the Union of India. What is the problem?
This election could come down to small margins. We are talking about a three-way race, like I told you, for just 17 million votes or thereabouts. So every bit of support counts. And that is why there is a lot of talk about the Tamils in Sri Lanka. The Tamils are the largest minority in Sri Lanka, and historically they have voted as one bloc. But this election could be different. The Tamil vote could be split in three different directions. What has caused this split? Who will benefit from it? And what are the big issues for Sri Lankan Tamils? Our next report tells you. With every Sri Lankan election comes the same question. Who will the Tamils vote for? Until now, the answer was straightforward. Whoever is not named Rajapaksa. Both Mahinda and Gotabaya terrorized the Tamil community during the civil war. So their goal was pretty clear: keep the Rajapaksas out at any cost. But this year, it's not so simple. There is a Rajapaksa on the ballot, but it's not the veteran Mahinda or the disgraced Gotabaya. It's the young scion Namal. Someone who is expected to lose the election anyway. So we ask again, who will the Sri Lankan Tamils vote for? I'm afraid there is no one answer. Sri Lanka has a population of 20 million. 11% of these people are Tamil, and they're concentrated mostly in the country's north and east. But big cities also have Tamil-dominated suburbs. Like this one in Colombo, it's called Velavata. A lot of people also call it Little Jaffna. On our way here, we saw a lot of Tamil-owned shops. Behind me is a Tamil temple. In the last few years, these people have been dealt a double whammy. A, because of the persecution they faced at the hands of the country's political elite, and B, because of the crippling financial crisis. And these two issues will shape the Tamil vote in this election. There's a three-way split in the vote. Some Tamils are backing their own Tamil candidate, a symbolic contender at best.
යලි යලිත් එකතු පහදු කරමින් අනාගතයේ සුබසීන දකින්න ඇත්තන්ට
Some are backing mainstream Sinhalese candidates like Sajith Premadasa and Ranil Wickremesinghe, and some are boycotting the election altogether. They feel the system has failed them. It's hard to argue with that. The Sri Lankan civil war lasted from 1983 to 2009. Once the fighting ended, the Tamils had been battered. Almost 100,000 missing, houses razed, land captured, and over 40,000 killed. But the war's end did not mean a fresh start for them, because justice was yet to be served. It was only in 2024 that Sri Lanka proposed setting up a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. A draft bill was introduced to this end. And what would the commission do? Punish the perpetrators and offer justice to victims. Most rights groups have called this a hogwash, because real justice requires political will, and many leaders in Sri Lanka do not have that, including the frontrunner Anura Dissanayake.
It is true that things that should have not happened, happened during the war. On the question of accountability, it should not be in a way to take revenge, not in a way to accuse someone, but only to find out the truth.
No punishment, no accusations. Then what's the point of a Justice Commission? Surely a light scolding isn't enough for war criminals. Such positions have made one thing clear: this Anayake is not making headway among the Tamils. Many of them remember his party's violent Sinhalese nationalism, which is why they are backing the other mainstream candidates, Premadasa and Vikramasinghe. Premadasa has promised full implementation of the 13th Amendment.
We will be implementing the 13th Amendment. We will ensure that there is maximum devolution in one country. We will ensure that provincial council elections will be held as soon as possible to ensure that people's right is exercised without any further delay.
A quick detour here. In 1987, India and Sri Lanka signed a peace accord. It was aimed at resolving the civil war. The accord called for devolving more powers to the provinces. The hope was more autonomy would keep the Tamils happy. The same year the 13th Amendment was passed, it set up provincial councils in different regions. Just one problem though, these councils were not given any powers, no land power, no police authority and no financial powers. So the devolution was only on paper. Premadasa is promising a full implementation of the 13th Amendment, which is why he's got more Tamil support. Vikramasinghe too is promising to implement the 13th Amendment, but with caveats. He says the parliament will decide on empowering the regional councils. So voters may see it as a trick. You see, Ranil Vikramasinghe has been around for a long time, and in this time he's made promises to the Tamil voters. But afterwards, you don't see a lot of progress. This time too, he says if he's re-elected, he will set up a special commission to find missing Tamil persons from the war, which is a great idea. But he's been president for 2 years, running the country from the secretariat behind me. Why didn't he do it then? That's the question that a lot of Tamil voters are asking. The Tamil voters may be split, but make no mistake, their vote is more important than ever this time. The Sinhala vote is already divided among the front-runners, so the minority vote could be crucial. If Premadasa or Vikramasinghe can consolidate Tamil votes, it may play to their advantage. But if the vote is split, they may play into Disanayake's hand. Imagine the confusion of being a Tamil voter here. You must account for emotions, for justice, for livelihood, and for tactics before casting your vote. All while knowing that little may change no matter who wins. Now let's turn to the US. The country's central bank has made an announcement. That's the US Federal Reserve, or the Fed as it's called. It has finally cut interest rates by 0.5%.
Today, the Federal Open Market Committee decided to reduce the degree of policy restraint by lowering our policy interest rate by 0.5 percentage point.
This is the first rate cut in more than 4 years, and it was larger than expected, 0.5 percentage point. That's an aggressive move. It leaves the interest rate between 4.75 and 5%. There's a lot of speculation about what this means, about how it could affect the economy. But before we get into the details, let's understand the basics. First, what are the Fed's interest rates? Well, a country's central bank is usually the only institution that prints money. In the US, that's the Federal Reserve. They print money. After they print money, they lend it to regular banks, who then lend it to ordinary people. That's how the system works. Now, the Fed charges interest for lending out the money it prints. And when this changes, it has a domino effect. Lower Fed rates mean cheaper loans for everyone else. cheaper business loans, cheaper home loans, lower credit card fees. The works. That's how it works. The Fed cutting interest rates means that Americans can borrow more money freely. And this usually helps boost economic activity. That is the gist of it. So why would the Fed keep interest rates high? Why didn't it cut rates for 4 years? Because high interest rates help fight a big problem, and that is inflation. In 2022, the US was facing record inflation. It was well over 9%. Things were becoming unaffordable for ordinary Americans. Rising interest rates helps dent inflation. It helps keep inflation in check. Because high interest rates mean higher borrowing costs. People and businesses cannot afford to take out loans anymore, or that frequently. So demand cools, people stop buying a lot of things, and prices start falling. At least they stop rising quickly, if not falling. So to tame inflation, the Fed started raising its interest rates back in March 2022. And the Fed kept raising rates till July last year, and then it stopped. It waited for inflation to come down. Rates have been steady for more than a year now, and inflation has been coming down. It came down to about 2.5% last month. So the Fed finally decided that it was time to ease up. And that is why it has cut rates.
I would just say that, the U.S. economy is in a good place, and our decision today is designed to keep it there.
Now you might think that if everything's going well, why the aggressive cut? The Fed usually tweaks rates by just 25 basis points. That's 0.25%. So then why did it lower rates by a whole 0.5% this time? Well, there are a few theories. One is that the Fed felt that it was behind the pack. Other central banks had already started cutting rates, like those in Europe, the UK and Canada. So the US is now playing catch-up. But there's also another theory. The Fed wants to cut rates by another 0.5% by the end of this year, and then 1% in 2025 and 0.5% in 2026 as well. Usually when the cuts are this steep, it spells trouble. It usually signals economic trouble, like a recession. Now the Fed chair says that there is nothing to worry about at the moment and that the economy is in a good place. And this is just a way to make things even better. But not everyone's convinced.
Sir, what's your reaction to the Fed cutting interest rates today?
I guess it shows the economy is very bad to cut it by that much. Assuming they're not just playing politics, the economy would be very bad, or they're playing politics, one or the other. But it was a big cut.
Donald Trump says that either the economy is in a bad shape or the steep cut was a political move. It comes less than 2 months before the US presidential election. The Fed says that the American economy is doing well, so this could be seen as an endorsement of the Democratic Party. Of course, the Fed chair has denied this. He said that there was no political motivation behind this move. But that won't stop the attacks from coming. Whatever the reason, the Fed has cut rates. Other countries will follow suit. Most of the cost of borrowing may start to ease all over the world. Does this mean that the recent years of economic distress are finally over? Well, let's not get carried away. We'll be tracking all the developments for you on this front. There is a new flashpoint in the India-Canada relationship. Canada is levelling fresh allegations against India. It says India meddles in Canada's elections. These claims have been made by CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. That's the intelligence agency of Canada. It has come up with a report and it makes some sweeping claims. It says India funds favorable candidates. It indulges in misinformation and spreads quote-unquote false narratives against Canadian officials. These are the claims made in this report. And frankly, there is nothing new about them. In the month of May this year, Canada had made similar allegations. And like most of the claims that they make, this one too lacks any substance or proof. But let's look at the latest report more closely. Canada says that politicians, and I'm quoting again, politicians got illicit financial support from India. Who were these politicians? Have the Canadians given any names? Well, they haven't. There are no names in the report. In fact, they say that in some cases, the politicians may not even know that they're getting any funding from India. Does Canada have any evidence to back this? Or is it just shooting in the dark again and hoping that one of these accusations will stick? India, of course, has issued a rebuttal to this report. It has called the claims politically motivated and at the same time highlighted how the Trudeau government supports Khalistanis. India says Khalistanis get institutional support in Canada and they are the ones meddling in India's internal affairs. And Canada is yet to respond to this, but the Khalistan issue is back in the spotlight. It has become a persistent problem in Canada. Ottawa has allowed these separatists to operate freely and repeatedly ignored India's concerns. What's worse, Canada's neighbour, the US, seems to be following a similar path. It has allowed Gurpatwant Singh Pannu to leverage the American legal system against India. You may remember that India has designated Pannu as a terrorist. He is the face of Sikhs for Justice. It's a separatist organization which is running a campaign for Khalistan, a separate state for Sikhs, a campaign to break India. Now, Pannu has filed a lawsuit in an American court. He says Indian officials hatched a plot to murder him. The court has issued a summons to the Indian government and it names Ajit Doval. He's India's national security advisor. It also names Samant Goyal, the former chief of RAW, that's the Research and Analysis Wing, India's foreign intelligence agency. New Delhi issued a strong response to this today.
As we've said earlier, these are completely unwarranted and unsubstantiated imputations. Now that these this particular case has been lodged, it doesn't change our views about the underlying situation. I would only invite your attention to the person behind this particular case, whose antecedents are well known.
The suit is a non-starter. Indian government is a sovereign entity and its officials have sovereign immunity. They cannot be tried by foreign courts, or in this case, summoned by an American court. India can choose to simply ignore this order, but it cannot ignore the Western support and patronage to Khalistanis. Now let's turn our attention to Africa. A new player is vying for influence in the continent. Viktor Orban of Hungary. He is launching a new project. Orban wants to send his soldiers to Chad. What would be their mission? To stop illegal migration from Africa to Europe. Now, Hungary is currently the president of the Council of EU. Orban wants to leverage this position and shape the foreign policy of the bloc. But his moves in Africa seem to be motivated by a personal agenda. Our next report has more details.
The past few months have been hectic for Viktor Orban. He first launched an ambitious bid to bring peace to Ukraine.
The Hungarian government sees the upcoming half a year, Hungary's EU presidency, and the work that will be done then as a peace mission.
Orban crisscrossed the world, but his peace plan failed to take off. So he's taking up a new assignment in Africa's Chad, a country which is more than double the size of France and 14 times bigger than Hungary. Orban wants to send his soldiers to Chad, a team of 200 troops in all. Orban says they'll fight illegal migration there. Just 200 troops to stop the flow of hundreds, if not thousands, of migrants. The numbers don't quite add up, and security experts agree. They doubt Hungary's deployment will have an impact. Then, what's driving Orban's interest? It could be Chad's natural resources. The African country has rich reserves of petroleum, uranium and gold. Orban is eyeing a piece of these resources. He's making a strong push to establish Hungary's presence in Africa. Budapest plans to open an embassy there. It has offered to support Chad's food and agriculture sectors. This aid could be worth $150 to $200 million. 25 scholarships are also on offer to students from Chad, and Orban wants to welcome them to Hungarian universities. But the most significant sign involves Orban's son. His name is Gaspar Orban. Reports say he's been given a special assignment. Gaspar Orban has been appointed as a liaison officer, and he's spearheading Hungary's mission to deploy troops there. Orban could be following Vladimir Putin's footsteps. In recent months, Russia had sought to expand its influence in Africa through deployment of troops. Last year, Russia chased French forces out of Burkina Faso, and they were replaced by the Russian military. Does Hungary want to replicate the same Russian playbook in Chad? The possibility can't be ruled out. Chad is the last French bastion in Sahel now. There are more than 1,000 French troops in the country. The arrival of Hungarian soldiers may cause friction, but are Orbán's troops ready for the challenge? Their inexperience may prove to be a stumbling block. Hungary hasn't had any direct military cooperation with Chad, and its soldiers lack any real experience. They don't even know how to speak in French, one of the two official languages of Chad. Despite that, Orbán has made a bold move. Just like his Ukraine peace plan, there is a high chance that this too could meet the same fate.
Being a chartered accountant is a matter of pride in India. In 2023, 26-year-old Anna Perail became one. She became a CA. She passed her CA exams with distinction. In March this year, she landed her first job with EY, that's Ernst & Young, one of the big 4 accounting firms in the world. Perail took to LinkedIn and she made an announcement about her dream job. But 4 months later, she was dead. Recently, her grieving mother, Anita Augustine, penned a letter. She wrote to EY and accused the company of overworking her daughter. She brought up, and I'm quoting, she brought up relentless demands, unrealistic expectations, bombarding work messages, and glorification of overwork. She says that her daughter was suffering from anxiety, sleeplessness, and stress. One day things got so bad that she was rushed to hospital where she was treated for exhaustion. Reports say later she died of a heart attack. Her mother adds in the letter that Perail's co-workers skipped her funeral. Now these words in this case have shaken workers everywhere. There is a wave of reactions. Thousands of people have taken to social media. They're sharing condolences and empathizing, sharing their own horror stories. They're calling for accountability in corporate offices. Meanwhile, EY has issued a statement. They have condoled the death but denied all allegations. The EY India chairman says, and I'm quoting, "We have around 1 lakh employees. There is no doubt each one has to work hard. Anna worked with us for 4 months. She was allotted work like any other employee. We don't believe that work pressure could have claimed her life." This has invited more backlash. Social media users are calling this a typical corporate response. And while the concern is valid, so far these are only allegations against EY. The centre has launched a probe, so it's best to wait for the result because only a full investigation can reveal what really happened and whether Anna Perail actually died of overwork. But it does highlight a problem that we've raised before, how overwork can kill people. In fact, overwork is killing people across the world. Earlier this month, a Chinese man died. He worked for 104 days continuously, 104 days with just 1 day off. He died from organ failure. The court ruled that his employer was 20% liable for the death, whatever that means. In May this year, an American banker died from a blood clot, allegedly due to overwork. And such cases are everywhere. The World Health Organization says that overwork is killing about 750,000 people each year, 750,000 people every year, because long hours come with health repercussions. There is an increased risk of heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and these are the big ones. But there are also subtler signs. When you sit at your desk all day and type away, it invites stiff joints, your carpal tunnel syndromes, backaches, hurting eyes, headaches. And then there's stress. This is a physical problem too, stress. It releases hormones in your body. This elevates blood pressure and cholesterol. Today, work is more connected than ever, so stress is just a call away. You know that stressful sensation that you feel when your boss calls? It is literally killing you. It may not seem like much. To many of you, this may sound like a typical work week, but after a point, the body cannot take it. In fact, working 55 hours or more can be dangerous. The risk of stroke increases by 35%. The risk of heart disease increases by 17%. That is not to say that you should never work long hours. No one becomes successful by working less. But it's important to know the difference between hard work and overwork. It's important to respect your boundaries, to understand your limits and prioritize your health. As for employers, yes, deadlines are important. Pushing workers is necessary in some cases. But how much and for how long? That's what you need to figure out. As a society, we need to strike a balance between work and life, or else we will continue losing lives. And now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. Hundreds evacuated as flash floods hit northern Italy. The US Coast Guard releases underwater footage of the Titan sub-wreckage. And US scientists discover the largest black hole jets ever recorded. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1893, women in New Zealand won the right to vote in elections. New Zealand became the first self-governing country to extend the right to vote to all women. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Vantage continues after a short break.
What the problem is, you tried to pass a resolution in the year 2000 to restore the status of Jammu and Kashmir prior to what it was before 1953. That resolution failed. It completely bombed, and once it's already bombed, why would you bring a false promise to the people of Jammu and Kashmir?
It is something. It is.
That happened during Farooq Abdullah's time as well, and you don't seem to have learnt your lesson.
Okay, it is not a false promise. It's absolutely that we believe in. It is what we consider as the right of every citizen of Jammu and Kashmir. It is something that was promised to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. It was something that was given by the Parliament of India to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So we see no wrong in asking for our own right. Two, the abrogation of Article 370 was done in absence of any elected government, any elected representative, any elected member from the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly. So, and coming back to what the BJP spokesperson was saying about Congress, they should actually ask themselves, when they made an alliance with the PDP in 2014, what was PDP's manifesto? Were they against Article 370? No. They talked about self-rule. They endorsed the 370. They spoke about talking with Pakistan. They spoke about trade with Pakistan. Why did the BJP form the government with them? Why would they?
Sure, Rohan Gupta, you'd like to respond to that. That's a very valid question being posed by Nasir Lord.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be embarking on a landmark 3-day visit to the United States of America. Mr. Modi would be first going to Wilmington in Delaware for a Quad Leader Summit. On September the 22nd, the Prime Minister will be in New York, where he would hold a big community event for the Indian diaspora in Long Island. On the 23rd of September, the Prime Minister will be attending the UNGA's Summit of the Future. CNN News 18 will be in the US to track every engagement of the Prime Minister.
Hello and welcome to the late night edition with me, Ayushman Singh Jamwal. Big breaking news coming in over a month since the RG rape and murder horror, ladies and gentlemen. Doctors will now begin scaling down their protest. There will be a rally tomorrow from the health department to the CBI office. Now, from Saturday, the doctors will rejoin the emergency services, but the strike will continue in the OPD services is what we are learning. This is a major move coming in from the protesting doctors after the Kolkata Police Commissioner Vineet Goyal, Director of Medical Education and the Director of Health Sciences were transferred. That is the big piece of breaking news that's coming in when it comes to all the developments surrounding the RG Kar rape and murder case and the anger of the protesting doctors. Now what we are learning is that the doctors are planning to scale down their protest. There will be a big rally tomorrow outside the Bengal Health Department leading up to the CBI office. Now at the same time, what we are learning is that emergency services will restart from Saturday, but the protest will continue and the strike will continue when it comes to OPD services. I'm joined by my colleague Kamalika Sen Gupta on the broadcast. So Kamalika, over a month